Everything.
Man, life is treating me well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, wonderfully well.
All right, perfect. Are you still in Pakistan?
Yes, I am still.
There's a I watched a documentary the other day and thought of you. Have you heard of the documentary called 14 Peaks?
14 Peak. No, I don't think so.
It's a Nepalese climber that climbs 14 of the highest peaks in the world, and apparently.
Oh yes. I got it. I did follow his story, and he's the first one to have climbed all the top 14 peaks in the world.
He wasn't the first in the world. He did it in 7 months, which is the previous record was like eight years. So they were going through a bunch of I guess a couple of them, at least 2 or 3, I think, are in Pakistan. I was like, oh, okay. I did not know.
Yeah.
I knew
the top 3 are in Pakistan.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's insane. So yeah, it was going through all the journey. The actual documentary is outstanding on Netflix. So when you get back, it might be worth a watch.
No, I'll definitely do, because the thing is, like, the world's largest 3 mountain ranges, they connect in Pakistan in the northern areas, the Karakoram, the Hindu Kush, and the third one is the Himalayas. Kedu is in the Himalayas. It's the second tallest peak. It's a crazy country, which has got like the tallest mountains, then the desert, then plain land. I say it's just like U.S. squeezed into Texas.
It's insane. And just watching the it takes a special type of person to even think about going above the death zone, above that 8,000 meters, and to do it, at 14 different peaks in 7 months. I'm like, this guy's lost his mind. But it doesn't look fun. I got to be honest. It doesn't look fun at all. But it's definitely interesting.
It's not. I have been to the base camp of like Nanga Parbat. It's like I think the 8th tallest in the world.
Yeah.
Even getting to the base camp is a struggle. But it's just like, when you get there, I say is like, you get to know yourself, the human, that you are kind of like nobody, and what the humans have achieved, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was just listening to it's the Joe Rogan podcast, but the guy he had on is called Sadhguru, and he's a spiritualist. So he's a mystic and visionary. I guess he's in India.
Oh, yes. He talks like really well.
Yeah, 50 most influential people, but a big reason that a big thing he's kind of talking about through the use of yoga and through the use of different things is to separate yourself from your mind a little bit, so that you can realize just how you're part of a greater thing and fairly inconsequential as a person, which is very true.
You know what it's true. And what I find even more mind-boggling is, like, yes, we are very inconsequential in relate to like the greater scheme of the thing, but at the same time, our impact is so big and it's so huge. Just even if we talk in terms of the human race, it's just like, it's totally 180-degree off. It's just like, at one time you're nobody, and at the same time you're everybody. It's just like that state of atom that can have multiple states at the same time.
Yeah, it at some point, I mean, I guess, the people that become more evolved, may become genuine giants. But as I believe it was Kanye's mom used to say, that if you're a giant looks in the mirror and sees no one. Other people look at them and think they're a giant, but I guess having that ego under control and being humble is part of the key to being a great person. I don't know that Kanye ever got that lesson under control, but his mom certainly did.
Yeah, being humble is the most difficult thing for any human being, I guess. Every religion, even if there's no religion, even people who does not belong anywhere, it's just like I think the innate nature that tells the human being is to be humble. And anybody who gets like any kind of thing that is more than what he is capable of, he just forgets it. And then at the same time, I don't know whether it's God, since I believe in God, so I say like it's God, it's nature or the system that has been created. He is brought down to earth. In our front of our eyes, we have seen so many people in the time that we have spent who used to move the world, but when they went away, it was not even a blink of an eye.
Yeah. And all the miracles in nature and all the miracles of just people that are capable of doing these things, that are capable of thinking some of these great thoughts and accomplishing some things that were technically deemed to be impossible here on Earth. I mean, it's it's funny because leading into this conversation, it's not, money is obviously a big big motivating factor so that you don't have to worry about things. But at the end of the day, it's not that relevant. It is more relevant to accomplish things and do great things and create great things that other people can leverage that will leave a longer impact on the world than the physical body will. So, that's
absolutely.
And that's the beauty of doing the software work is, there will be things that will evolve off of anything that's created now. It's inherently going to get better over time. But for a period of time during a period of the world that's going to be looked back on as one of the greatest periods of the world in history, we get a chance to leave a mark that will be, stored as long as data and memory cards are. So it's kind of cool.
You've just hit the nail. Yeah, I think it's more than cool because like maybe we are like the last of the generation that has seen so much change and still seeing so much change. And by the time when we leave, and if we live long enough, we will be seeing so much change that if we brought somebody from 90s, 80s, or 1970s to today's world, he'll be like, "This is not Earth. I'm somewhere else. This is a sci-fi game that you are playing."
Correct. Yeah. I mean, coming up from no video games to Atari to no TVs or just the tube TVs with 4 channels to pretty much unlimited movies and streaming and phones that are more powerful than the computers that took us to the moon. I mean, way more powerful, I should say, not even remotely close to the power that apparently took us to the moon. And people would be freaked out.
Oh man, I vividly remember that reading stories, and they were like wizards, and they would have water in a bowl, and they will say some chant, and the water will show people moving around somewhere, say like in another city or anywhere. And now we are doing it every day on WhatsApp or whatever and wherever. So it's just like magic that humans have turned into a regular everyday thing. I mean, and today's people cannot think without that.
Well, even think about this phone call. You and I are talking pretty much effortlessly over probably about halfway around the world. I mean, you're Pakistan, I'm in Florida, and it's crystal clear conversation as if we were across the table from each other. I mean, and people take that for granted.
Oh, that's true. I think the stuff that we started talking is being humble. I think as humans all over the world, we are not showing our gratitude. We take things too much for granted because we haven't seen the bad times, the times when people did not have food to eat. Now there's so much food that is being wasted all around. People can eat meat 5 times a day, and there were times people cannot have, like, I would say, wheat 1 time a day. So it's just like it's in a blessing area that we are living. If we have got like any infection, we'll just go and get an antibiotic and get cured in a day.
You better knock on wood, because I think that food situation might be coming full circle with the Russia-Ukraine war. The wheat harvests are being shut down. China just shut down the largest port in the world because of COVID yesterday. The supply chain was already pretty weak, so things aren't looking. It could be a pretty big food shortage coming up.
Yeah, at times I just cannot understand humans. Like, why so much war? Why so much killing? But there's like so much that everybody can do to help everybody else. It's just like, it's crazy at times when we are doing so wonderful things. Why the world has to go into a cycle of war. It's been like
I think
after World War there was like North Korean war, and then the Vietnam, then Afghanistan, then the Middle East war, and then now
I think a lot of times
understand.
people, and I don't get it either, this is supposition, but I think sometimes things have gone kind of spiraled out of control at a world government level and a central banker level. So here in the United States, we have $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities just for the baby boomers. And we're already, so far in debt that when we start raising rates, we won't even be able to, with the tax revenues that we have projected, we won't even be able to make the interest payments on the rates, much less fund the government. So in essence, the United States, you and I are both wealthier. If we have $1 in our bank, we're both wealthier than the United States of America government in reality, not just theoretically. So they know that this is unsustainable. And when it's unsustainable, you can create a war economy. You can import millions of people into the country, try to get more tax revenue. But the real thing is, if you're bringing in a lot of unskilled people when you aren't vetting, it's one thing to bring in, H-1Bs and other things and computer programmers. It's quite another when the world's moving towards automation. So I'm not really sure what the goal is of bringing in a bunch of people across the border if they're going to have jobs. But either way, there might be some panic, and during this panic, maybe there's a need to, start a war to sort of change the subject. It seems like pretty high stakes to sort of risk everybody's life in the world to change the subject, but power is a hell of a drug. Keeping power and control.
It's an elixir.
It's very odd that
absolute power makes you absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, you watch what people did with COVID. The people in charge really exercised a lot of power, and they shifted from COVID to World War III to keep that power, like professional race car driver shifts from fourth to fifth. It's smooth as silk. People are now freaked out about that. There's still going to be more food shortages, but in the meantime, it's a very strange time. I mean, really. No matter what, that's the beauty of being in software is everybody's going to need automation. Everyone's and with the model that we've been working on, it does provide, different types of income streams and different types of opportunities for employment and growth. So, a lot of other people that aren't positioned, that maybe are on anything but commodities will do well, gold, silver, uranium, wheat. But there's not a whole lot of areas other than technology, cryptocurrencies, and you there?
Hey, I'm sorry, I was driving and I just passed through an area where there was like this.
No problem. No problem. The miracle of international calls has its issues as well. So you've got.
Yeah.
I was on the phone with the IRS for an hour and a half today to let them know that I'd already made the payment that they're asking me for. And at the end of the call, right when it was, I think 95% done, the call dropped, and I went, "You've got to be kidding me!"
Oh my God!
That was an hour and 34 minutes. Back to ground zero. Yeah, hopefully she got the memo and they get out some new paperwork. But I heard hello, and I'm going hello, like hello, like please don't go, and then click, and I went, oh my God.
That's and to just like finish the stuff that you were saying, and I think that is one of the particular reasons that now they have formed a committee to bring this virtual coin world under regulation, because they're going to take away like 50% of all the money in taxes.
Yeah, and they're also creating the so you probably saw the executive order by Biden, where one of the things he said, hey, I want all the agencies to look at the regulatory and national security interests of cryptocurrencies, but I also want to look into a central bank digital currency, CBDC, which they've been working on that for a long time anyway. It's sort of I guess a bit of a head fake to pretend that they're just now looking into it. I mean, the Chinese have already rolled it out with their yen. and the U.S. government's been working on that for a while. But I think the plan is to because you can't be against the oil and against natural gas and have your dollar tied to oil and natural gas. So you can't basically cut off your own currency like we're doing right now, unless there's another plan that's already been in place for a while. It's just very bizarre for a country like the United States that literally runs on the petrodollar to declare war on the petrodollar. So that's been happening for a while here in the U.S. and the cost of gas is a pretty big indicator that war is very real. But if they're going to go to the digital currency, it'll be interesting to see what they tie that to, because you can't tie a digital currency to, I mean, you could go back to the gold standard, but you're not going to tie it to oil anymore. And if you tie it to gold, I think the United States may or may not have as much gold as we pretend we do in Fort Knox. But or they're just
the biggest gold deposits would be in India.
India, Russia, China. They've been they've been compiling quite a bit of gold for quite some time. But who knows, when we knocked off Gaddafi, who nobody even asked what happened to his gold. He had a ton of gold over there, and nobody's ever said, "Hey, what?"
The French people, they wanted to get him removed, so you never know. Maybe it was like divided among all of them.
It could.
At the end of the day, what's crazy is that we are still living in times of, like, say, 600 or 1,000 years ago, when the kingdom declared war on another kingdom because their coffers were empty.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly where we are right now. And how it shakes out, I think China is going to be the beneficiary, and I think India sees the writing on the wall there. I hear President Xi has been invited to India, and I think everybody sees the writings on the wall that even with this U.S.-Russia conflict, that the real parties that are going to be hurt are the European parties and the United States, especially the citizens that, as you aptly pointed out earlier, are pretty spoiled, aren't used to any sort of hardships for real, and probably in for a pretty big wake-up call compared to countries that are really truly poor countries, especially if we lose the dollar as a reserve status. So one of the cool things with HapPhi is we're tying, the idea is to tie to a stable coin, but really that stable coin can be altered, and the US dollar version of it can easily be converted. So if somebody else, so I don't know if you saw that thing I sent you on Terra Luna, the Luna coin, the Terra group, where they've created their own stable coin that partially ties to Bitcoin, partially ties to a stable coin, and then they've got their depreciating. So their coin is a naturally deflationary coin. So they've tried to sort of put together an amalgamation of different coins to be able to create a stable coin that isn't tied to fiat. The one we've been talking about so far is tied to fiat, but that, luckily we haven't gotten there yet because there's so many different factors going on that by the time we actually get to that point, fiat might not be the best option. We're tying it to the US dollar, and the US dollar is going away, which it appears is a lot closer than anybody really realized. I mean, today the Saudis announced that they're going to start trading oil on the yen. So that's kind of puts the US dollar in a bit of a death throw right there. So as that happens, being able to actually position it and peg it to the proper place is pretty cool, because it'll keep us ahead of the game and allow the actual monetization portion of the product to be stabilized and for people to actually be able to roll and flow appropriately and hopefully stay ahead of some of this mess that's coming, because that's really, at the end of the day, there's so much noise going on in the world right now. I just take a deep breath and say, just stay focused and make sure that stay focused, say the right prayers, say thanks there, say thanks for the opportunity for being here, and and everything will be all right. But while a lot of other people are probably hunkering down, I think now is a good time to hit the gas and, come out the other end.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think what makes my creative juices flow and what's like bringing me around working with you and specifically on HapPhi is how just you were saying that it's hard to understand like how people have thought about and created these amazing products. It's just like for an average person, it's an unbelievable thing what they want to do, and I think what you are trying to do and what I am trying to learn with you is like how to create that kind of a currency that is stable enough and that is not influenced by the major factors. Maybe the currency, maybe we can create like a bread basket of like performing currency and all that stuff. Or like how we do it. It's how the thing that is keeping me up at night. And I think maybe we can set ourselves having more of these sessions where we can turn on our machines together and work on it. And as you send me stuff, I can start reading it more and more because I think this is something that is going to be normal as the debit card, as the digital currency that we are using, and it's gonna be very soon in a few years' time. It's just like the building blocks of all that stuff that is happening.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing it with ATMs across the world. El Salvador making Bitcoin their actual currency. Mexico is allowing Bitcoin to be currency. Brazil. There's countries popping up all over the world that are recognizing Bitcoin as actual currency, and this move with the dollar, what's happening, you're seeing a lot of volatility in the crypto markets right now, and that's to be expected. It's kind of tied to the stock market to a degree right now. That's going to change, because at some point people will have their money in the markets for maybe commodities, uranium, a couple key stocks, Amazon, etc. But you're going to see a major crash coming, and people are going to be running from the dollar and trying to figure out what to do with their money. And at that point, and I've been saying this for years, buy something, buy anything, any asset, house, car, any gold, silver, anything you can, because the dollar is not going to do well.
Anything physical.
Anytime you print 40% of the available currency of the US dollar over a year's period of time, you're going to see hyperinflation, and they're printing more and more. And the powers that be keep saying that this is a good thing for inflation, and it's the opposite. They know that. They're just lying to people. So it's going to continue to get worse.
They're just like passing on to the next. Yeah, it's like they're just passing it on to the next generation, to the next generation.
Yeah,
Still,
and now they're going to blame Putin.
Will not be able to hold it.
And they're going to blame Putin
Yeah.
for the whole thing. And in the meantime, the inflationary wheels, it's a 12 to 18 month lag behind the actual printing before you see the inflation. So we haven't even seen the full inflation from the Biden presidency. We're seeing a lot of it right now. And a lot of people don't know this from the Trump presidency, from that last year of COVID. The next round of it's going to be even worse. So, the good thing there, I mean, it's not good for the country, it's not good for people, but the good thing there is if you know it's coming, you can prepare for it. And it may be that we end up tying the stability of the HapPhi token straight to Bitcoin, so that, $1 of HapPhi is $1 of Bitcoin on that particular, at that particular moment when you sell it. So it's a dollar to dollar peg. So it's not necessarily going to go up or down. You don't own the actual Bitcoin itself until you sell. Then at that point, you're, buying $1 of Bitcoin or selling $1 of Bitcoin to be able to get your money that you could move. With a Coinbase wallet, it could be any number of coins that they support. And all of them, should be able to be pretty seamless through the Coinbase API. So that's kind of cool because it does offer some flexibility. The only thing to keep an eye on there is what this executive order actually means. And when all the dust settles, is the US government going to support crypto and blockchain development, which I hope they do. But there's going to be a ton of pressure against that. DeFi is going to scare banks and insurance companies enough to lobby against it. This case with XRP shows the SEC is pretty heavily vested in trying to screw over coins. And in this case, I think XRP is going to beat the SEC because they did a terrible job. And that will pretty much preclude them from going after a lot of other coins here in the US. But what will the US government try to do? Regulate stable coins or whatever it is. I think whatever they try to do will be a bit of a failure on the truly decentralized coins like Bitcoin. But they're gonna try to get their paws in this somehow, some way. Not just from a tax perspective, but probably a little bit deeper than that. And we just have to be prepared for anything and everything. Like India banned Bitcoin, so did China. It didn't do anything. People still. It had an effect on the market, but people still use it.
Yeah, it's banned in Pakistan, but I'm seeing like kids from 18 years to 40 years, they're dealing with it like kind of crazy. Whoever, whatever has like any spare money, they're just like into this thing, and they are the ones who are driving it.
Do you know where they're buying it? I would assume that they're figuring out a way onto an exchange, or how are they getting access to the Bitcoin if it's banned? Are they are they logging in as if they were in another country in order to bypass the Pakistan ban?
Yeah, they're just like they're like always are these dealers who have got the money and who have got the coins, and then they move the money to them physically, and then they move it. So they move around in the world and do that. So there's like this underground black market that is going on, and you just cannot shut it anywhere. It was never shut in any period of human history.
Yeah, that's my understanding too, is that they actually use, in some cases, they're using paper, to move it, because at the end of the day, you can do that, but they're not actually doing, they're not actually, or they're using text messages and paper, some system like that, where they're not actually dealing with an exchange. They have a wallet that's not tied to, an exchange, just a distributed wallet, and they'll, move it around from wherever they are to wherever they are without having to go through a Coinbase or anything like that, which is pretty cool. So this,
yeah, and then there are like people on Coinbase and all that stuff. So what happened was, like, I was with like a friend the other day. I was having dinner, and he wanted to spend like $5,000 or something. He called another guy, who called another guy, and he came in and he transferred the money in his account, in his bank account, online, and then he transferred the money from his wallet to his wallet.
Gotcha. So just cash to cash, wallet to wallet is two separate transactions, so that it wasn't tied directly. Yeah. That that may explain why the U.S. government was trying to shut down or track every. It was in a piece of legislation. It didn't pass, at least the original version, where anything that was over a $600 transaction would alert the IRS. And I just went, you know what? That's not a lot of money. And then they said, okay, we'll change it. We'll make it so as long as $6,000 a year. So they actually lowered the amount to instead of $600 a transaction, but they raised the overall amount over the course of a year and lowered the amount per month or per transaction.
Yeah.
And just to try to fool people, just to try to fool them into thinking it wasn't that big of a deal. In the meantime, you can't get, I've tried today, I got the IRS agent after an hour, but it took me about 2 months of calling every day, where every day they'd say, we're too busy, call back tomorrow. So if they can't, function right now with a small, without that, I mean, imagine the manpower it'll take to actually manage every transaction over $600 in the United States. I think they may be shooting a little too high considering their staffing shortages, but that's neither here nor there. So
I think what they're doing is like, it's just like the fear factor that whenever we are working on software products, or like even in physical. So suppose if you build a house and you put like a gate, then there's an open gate, and then you just put like a lock on it. So majority, if they're like 100 people pass, if there's an open gate, maybe 90 will think to come in and pick up something. But if it's locked, 10% of the ones, they will always come. So they're just trying to ensure that at least the people who are on the benches, they do not come in. So it's just like a scare tactic for them, so they can reduce the amount. But the people who are in there, they're going to be coming in.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're doing something wrong, then maybe you'll do something different. But if you're not, then you won't care. You'll be like, whatever, my $600, this is legit. Who cares? I guess there is an element of deterrence just by putting something like that out there, but it becomes a little dystopian if abused. It can, especially when you look at what happened in Canada, where they started shutting down people's bank accounts for making legal donations to political causes that the government said later that they didn't want or like, but they were legal at the time, and then just started confiscating people's bank accounts. That always becomes a concern, is at some point, if you give government that power, somebody's going to be in power and use that power in a way for which somebody doesn't like it. And if you like it on one end, wait a few years and you'll probably not like it on the other end. It's always, I guess, always best to try to limit government from being able to do that to you in the first place, so that you don't end up not able to feed your family. But on to us.
Yeah, because like this is something that that's what they did in Denmark. Because like one of my friends had like invested, he made like over, I think, $500,000 or something. And then there was like no regulations. Then they started introducing these regulations like a year ago. And now they're after him and talking about like, oh, you have made this much money, so now you have to return money to us. So it's kind of crazy.
I'm sure he's like, wait a second, this was completely legal when I did it. It's always weird when they do these things after the fact, but I mean, still, it sounds like
what I think about it. It's just like when in times of kingdoms and the kings were there, and then there was like just a decree announced by them that there's a war going on or whatever. So we need this much silver, whatever you have, we're going to take it, whether you like it or not.
They've done that here in the United States, and I think pretty much every single time. I think we've had gold confiscations here at least 3 times, where anybody who had gold or had bought gold, the government would come and confiscate that from you, which is rather unbelievable, isn't it? What's the point of trying to actually make good decisions on your financial behalf, and if the gold and or silver that you've accumulated can just be snatched up in hard times on the whim? And that's one of the great things about cryptocurrency is you can't do that. If you have it in a cold wallet, you just have to remember your passcode, and they can not get to it. You could just remember that passcode and spin up the wallet. All the different 16 different keywords, your password, spin up that wallet anywhere in the world. I actually got a kick out of it. There was a guy, and obviously this person isn't a good person, but they'd done some scam and stole millions of dollars, and the government had the actual wallet itself, but the wallet itself has a password, and if you use the password too many times or you try too many times, the wallet self erases. So this guy knew the 16 word code, and they kept saying, well, what's the code here? And he's like, I'm not telling you a damn thing. And they'd been at it for him for days, and he just refused to tell. So they had to give up. So at the end of the day, until they let him go, he pulls up and opens another wallet, and they have a chance to potentially track that down, which is a lot more difficult, unless he's like a, upper level person and they have a government warrant. He's basically going to have access to everything he took, because they can't do anything about it. They can't recover it without that seed key and without his password. They could have that cold drive all they want, and it's completely useless to them.
So with the kind of regulation and the manpower that there is, I think it's going to take at least a decade or more to have government access like every account that is out there. Only the accounts that they can access or they will put their focus on will be like $10 million of that, or even more than that.
they can
So there's a huge market there.
they can take the ones that are on exchanges they can get now. So if you have your money on Coinbase, if you have it on Kraken, Binance, KuCoin, whatever you're using, Bittrex, they can get the keys. So that when you have it on an exchange, the keys are actually held by the exchange itself. When you have it on when you have it on a cold wallet, you become the bank. Now, on the positive side, you become the bank. So if you want to travel with $1 million, you don't have to declare it. You just have to bring your device and or your passcode. You can go all throughout the world with no device and basically be walking with your millions of dollars just by knowing the seed recovery and your passcode. The challenge is if you leave it on the if you lose that and you forget your passcode, you might lose everything that you have. Done. So if you get in let's say that your seed phrase is in your head and you get in a car accident and you have a concussion that's caused brain damage, you could literally lose everything you have just because you forgot. So the other challenge is if you leave it in a public exchange, yes, there's more safe gaps there where you can access your money. You have password recovery. You don't need your seed phrase to access it from a regular hot wallet. But the downside is at some point, somebody can confiscate that money from you because you don't own the actual key itself. So the old phrase in crypto is if you don't have the keys, you don't own your coins. Some people like it that way because it gives them more security to know that, that they don't have to worry about losing it quite as much. It's almost like having your money in a bank versus having your money, in a virtual cell in your house. So, there are pros and cons to each, but in an environment where your stuff can be taken, or if you're worried about cyber attacks during a time of war, like right now, a cyber attack could technically wipe out a lot of people if they're holding their money on an exchange. So at that point, you probably are smart to have a cold wallet just to protect your assets.
Well, that makes total sense.
So let's talk about the products here. Yes. So you and I, we have enough going on with HapPhi and that sort of stuff as far as that goes, but I think there's a huge opportunity to bring in a lot more business. I'm going to be doing a podcast, walking people through all the development of a product, everything that's involved, choosing a blockchain, different entrepreneurs. And really the goal is just to keep pumping up the, get a lot of followers and people that are involved with this project prior to launching the Pi part to then really kick off the, what you'd call the generic growth of the community. But along those lines, right now, there's enough with what we're doing and attacking to be able to start going after this business on the consulting side. So what were your thoughts on that? And I can start putting some together on that this week and actually have a product up and running, or an offering up and running pretty quickly, just based on what we have with some of the things that we've done on this project in particular and things past. I can at least break out, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we do well, and see what type of appetite there is. I think there's a massive appetite out there, especially and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about video conferencing. When I was looking at video conferencing companies that would do